It's other than the Deputy Speaker's apology? None? Thank you very much.
Speaker, I raised my hand. It's Annelie Lotriet.
Yes, Dr. Lotriet, I'm sorry.
Speaker, I'm not sure if our Chief Whip is going to join. It might be intermittently. And then our alternative member, Werner Horn, will also not be able to join us today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Kaso.
We also got an apology from Honorable Makwanisha.
Makwanisha?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you very much. In other words, if we have only 3 apologies, it means that honestly we do have a quorum today, do we?
Madam Speaker, we do have a quorum today. We do have a quorum, certainly today. I would also just like to indicate that Rule 163 allows the Speaker to co-opt a member, and therefore we are recommending that Honorable Kornov, because even though he attends the meetings of this committee, he's not a member, that he be co-opted so that we can have a full quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. Honorable members, we then proceed. May we now consider the agenda before us? Are we happy with the agenda? I have a proposal to make if we're happy with the agenda, on the agenda. My proposal, honorable members, is to, after matters arising, that we start with the consideration of the report of subcommittee on review, because it's a very brief report from what I have seen. And then finally, our number 6 then becomes the Judicial Commission report. Is that agreed, honorable members?
Agreed, Madam Speaker.
Agreed, Honorable
Speaker. Yes, ma'am. Yes, I don't see your hand. We all agree. Okay, thank you very much, honorable members. You made my work easy. Thank you. So can somebody then move for the adoption of the agenda?
I'll move, Chairperson. Dr. Mulder speaking.
Thank you very much.
Someone seconds, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mulder. Honorable member moves and Member Madam Bissouma seconds. Now, having adopted the agenda, honorable members, I would now proceed to look at matters arising.
Honorable Speaker, just
Honorable Speaker.
Consideration of the minutes, honorable members. Consideration of the minutes. Okay. Thank you very much, honorable members. That is the last part of our minutes. Can somebody move for the adoption of our minutes of the meeting of the 4th of November?
I move, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Hude. Honorable Machutina.
Honorable Speaker, I second the adoption of the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lishuma. Thank you. Colleagues, having adopted the minutes, we then proceed to deal with matters arising from the minutes of the 4th. But I do want, okay, let me allow Mr. Kaso. Mr. Kaso?
My apologies, Madam Speaker. I wanted to suggest, and I suspect I wanted to say the same, that because the meeting today is effectively the continuation of the meeting of the last meeting, so the matters arising are covered under today's agenda.
Yes, actually, yes. All the matters arising out of the minutes of the meeting of the 4th of November are the same matters which we have on our agenda today. Agreed, honorable members, no problem, then we proceed. As I had requested earlier on, and I didn't hear any opposition to that, the draft agenda was adopted with amendments. My proposal was that we start with the consideration of the review subcommittee of the rules. And I now hand over to invite Honorable Jahude to make a presentation.
Honorable Speaker, good morning, everyone and my colleagues. I am experiencing load shedding. I request that Mr. Paso present the report. I'll make some additions. I don't want to be cut off maybe because my network is very poor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Jahude. Mr. Kaso, will you please take us through?
By all means, thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I'll request my colleagues to place on the screen the report of the subcommittee, which is Annexure B. Here we deal with matters that were referred to the subcommittee by the Rules Committee. So under paragraph A is the first lot of items that were referred, technical amendments, principle of a ruling, procedures to regulate the display of placards and objects in the House, as well as the use of virtual background, opportunities for members to raise matters in the House with reference to questions to the executive for oral reply. And then the next item deals with matters that were later referred on the 2nd of September. This dealt with delayed replies to written questions and guidelines thereto, the review of operating procedures in the rules which relate to removal of members from the House, proposal to introduce interpellations, which was sponsored by the Chief Whip of the Opposition, and proposal for oversight committee over the President. The subcommittee met in October and it discussed and finalized these matters. And of course, there are those that the subcommittee has not been able to report on conclusively, and we will deal with that. The first item that we want to deal with, honorable members, under B, paragraph B, this relates to technical amendments to rules for virtual / hybrid sittings. Basically, what is being done here is to just provide clarity so that we avoid any form of doubt. That basically clarifies that these rules deal with both virtual and hybrid sittings. Later on, I will go to Annexure A, which details what I've just said. So those are really technical amendments that are being brought before this committee. The second item deals with a referral of principle of a ruling. The matter had been raised by Honorable Mazon about proceedings in the Energy and Minerals Committee, which is chaired by Honorable Luzipo, where certain remarks were allegedly made by Honorable Kula, and these are stated here, were based on the superiority of believing whiteness and nothing else, that because we are white, we are not, we are correct. There is no sense and no logic. Honorable Matswane referred these matters to the Rules Committee so that the Rules Committee can deal with how do we handle issues like this when they arise in committees. And the subcommittee dealt with the issue. We will go to the recommendation of the subcommittee. Basically, it said that having deliberated on the matter, the subcommittee recommends that the Rules Committee affirm the principle of freedom of speech, as well as the need for members to refrain from making allegations of racism and generalizations and intolerances with regard to matters such as tribalism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, and so forth. Just to explain, honorable members, when matters such as this are referred to the Rules Committee, the Rules Committee deals with the principle of the ruling, does not necessarily review the ruling by a chairperson or a presiding officer, but it basically deals with the principle of the ruling and establishes the principle. And therefore, the subcommittee recommends that this be the principle that is established when we deal with matters such as the one that was raised by Honorable Matswane. The next one, Honorable Speaker, deals with procedures to regulate placards and objects in the House. And this matter originated in the Chief Whip's Forum, where it reflected on events that played out in the House when a placard was displayed. And the forum proposed that the Rules Committee must deal with this matter with a view to developing guidelines. The Rules Committee the Speaker subsequently referred the matter to the subcommittee on the review of rules. Let's go to the recommendations. And following this, the subcommittee met, and it has proposed that Rule 64, which deals with objects in the House, be amended. And I'll later on just go to the specifics, to prohibit members from bringing placards and objects into the House except with the prior permission of the Speaker. So that is the essence of the proposed amendment, that only when Speaker is given permission can placards and objects be brought into the House. Basically, this rule is just trying to bring consistency into application, because for objects, there's always been an expectation that members would seek the permission of the House, of the Speaker, before such are brought into the House. We are extending this now to placards as well. Also, we dealt with the issue of backgrounds on virtual sittings, and we will go to the detail of what the subcommittee is proposing there. Then E deals with the opportunities to raise matters in the House with reference to questions to the executive. And here the issue really was that perhaps there's a need to limit the number of questions that are directed to a minister on any question day. The idea is that more opportunities should be created, firstly for members to ask questions, but also different ministers to be able to have an opportunity to respond to questions, because currently 10 questions can be directed to a minister, and the recommendation is that be reduced to 4 questions. We go to the next point. Yes, I've dealt with this matter. Then F, we'll go to F. This deals with the issue of delayed replies to questions, and we'll just go straight to the recommendation. The Rules Committee is really seeking to improve this matter so as to ensure that the responses from the executive can be facilitated and that those responses can be received timelessly. So the Rules Committee, the subcommittee is proposing to the Rules Committee that the following be the principle. It will form part of the guidelines of questions. That concerning the scope of ministerial responsibilities and their answerability on functional areas of concurrent responsibilities between the different spheres of government, and how this impacted on the timelines of replies, questions to the executive should take into account their respective competencies. In other words, questions to a particular minister must relate to the portfolio under that minister. In the case of questions that seek information from government, such questions should take account of the non-availability of information before the pre-democratic era. And that's really the principle that is being recommended here. The next one deals, honorable members, with really recommendations of the investigation that took place after the events of 9 and 10 June. I hope I'm getting that dates correct. And where there were allegations of gender-based violence, and the speaker then took it upon herself to appoint a senior counsel to investigate the matter. And the report was given, discussed in this rules committee, and go down to recommendations. And some of the recommendations in that report were that prohibit staff and members of one gender from touching persons of another gender, provide that Annexure C to the rules take the form of guidelines rather than rules, given that the rules should, as a matter of best practice, be limited to members, and clarify the mandate of the subcommittee to consider the circumstances of the physical removal of members from the chamber. Basically, what we are saying is that the guidelines in reference to removal of members should be adjusted to reflect item A there. Then H dealt with interpellations. Honorable Kwahobe made a submission that this parliament should consider, it is NA, should consider going back to the practice of interpellations. The matter was referred to the subcommittee on the review of rules. A discussion was had there where there were views on both sides. The one view said reintroduce, the other view say, look, we have sufficient mechanisms currently. Instead, you must improve those mechanisms, including mini plenaries, where you can strengthen that mechanism for mini plenaries. So the subcommittee noted the following: that Parliament was receptive to proposals and reforms intended to improve its functioning. Debates and questions of the executive were an essential tool for members to hold the executive to account, and further consideration will be given to refining these mechanisms and the efficiency of procedures to this end. The subcommittee also suggested that political parties discuss in their caucuses the proposed reintroduction of interpellations. So this was not conclusive. The view is that currently there are mechanisms. Before we introduce or reintroduce, let's improve what we have, but also don't close the door to the discussion on interpellations, so that if there has been sufficient discussion on the matter, it can then be brought back and be dealt with. Of course, the chair of the subcommittee will clarify if I've misrepresented the subcommittee. Then the last one dealt with proposal for oversight committee over the presidency. This matter has been in the system at least actively since the fourth parliament, and so the matter was then referred to the subcommittee to consider. The subcommittee has had preliminary discussions on this issue, and the subcommittee decided that some more research needed to be conducted, and it requested the budget office to just do some analysis of the presidency and how the budget vote on the presidency is dealt with. The budget office has submitted a report which must serve before the subcommittee first, before it can be, the subcommittee can conclude its deliberations on this matter. Madam Speaker, I would now like to just briefly, I will not take a lot of time, just to go to the, just gloss over the technicalities, the technical amendments that are annexed there, just to show members the annexure to the subcommittee report. If my colleagues can show that annexure, please. Yes. So this one, this page, my apologies, the pages are not numbered. This page basically deals with a technical amendment where you reflect both virtual and hybrid, so that you remove any form of doubt in the process. We'll proceed, go to page 2 and go to page 3, because it deals with the same issue, just a technical amendment. I don't wish to spend much time there. Then let's go to the next one, please. This one, honorable members, will just stay there a bit. This one deals with proposed amendment to Rule 64E. This is the one that deals with placards. So the rule will read as follows: the part that deals with placards. member may not bring weapons of any kind, and the ones underlined are additions, nor dangerous or threatening objects or articles, nor replicas of such into the chamber. Then Roman figure 2, member may not bring non-dangerous or threatening objects, articles or placards. The ones where in brackets and bold are being removed into the chamber, except with a prior approval of the speaker. So this is the one dealing with the issue of placards. So here, emphasis is they need prior approval of the speaker, otherwise placards will be ruled out of the chamber. Then we move to the next one, the same document, please. Guidelines for use of backgrounds on the virtual platform. In terms of the rules for virtual sittings of the House, as adopted on 9 June, the current rules on order in public meetings and order in debate are applicable in a virtual or hybrid meeting. Just point of emphasis there. Members on the virtual platform are therefore required to conduct themselves as if they were physically present in the House. So members in the House are not allowed to just open their mics and speak. So that is expected of members on the virtual platform. 3, members must use their current parliamentary background or a blank background or a blurred background or a static picture of a member without party symbols or statements. I just want to repeat that because that's really what this one deals with. Members must use their current parliamentary background or a blank background or a blurred background or a static picture of a member without party symbols or statements. That is a recommendation from the subcommittee. Then the next one, I'm almost done with. Here, this is where I explain the issue of where you had 10 or where you currently have 10 questions that can be asked to a minister. The recommendation is that you should be reduced to 4 questions. And then the last one, I think it should be, yes. Go to the last one, please. Yes, go down, please. No. Go up. Is A and B. Go up, yes. Here, this is where we're saying we are implementing the recommendations of the investigation. That Parliamentary Protection Services personnel of one gender may not touch a member of another gender. And members of one gender may not touch a Parliamentary Protection Officer of another gender. So really here, the emphasis is what the report had said in regard to this matter. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I think that is the recommendations from the subcommittee. If there's anything that I have left out, I will recall while the chair of the subcommittee speaks or members contribute to this matter. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will stop there for now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kato. Honorable members, if I may remind honorable members, on the 4th of November, when we had our last meeting of the Rules Committee, we dealt, this report was presented to us. That is the report of the subcommittee. The only thing we did not do was to adopt the report. We did not adopt the report because we did not have a quorum. In other words, for now, I do not expect that with this report now having been presented again to us, that there will really be a discussion on the issues, because members did express their views on the report last week, but we did not, on the 4th, but we did not adopt. So I want to move that one member please adopt the report of the review subcommittee. Honorable Siviwe Kwahube, followed by Honorable Kubutile Kyanki, and then Dr. Chairperson of the subcommittee.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I just, for my clarity, I agree with you. The report was presented to us the last time we met, but from my understanding, the two matters which were introduced before the subcommittee were the issue of the reintroduction of interpellations, and the other issue was the matter of portfolio committee on the presidency. I see from the recommendations the issue of the portfolio committee is now going to be referred back to the rules committee based on the research that has been done by Parliament. But we are still to make the decision as a rules committee as to where to from now on the issue of the reintroduction of interpellations, because at the moment the recommendations are vague. And can I ask that we have a decision on that matter, even if it is to say the matter must be sent back to the subcommittee for then proper wording in terms of how we're going to take that forward. But I think we need to make a decision because the discussion was inconclusive at the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kwahube. Honorable Tianki.
No, thank you, Honorable Speaker, listeners, viewer. I was raising my hand on a small clarity, but maybe before I go to that clarity, just to reflect on the two issues raised by Honorable Kwarobe. That first, I think we agreed in the subcommittee in that last meeting, as would have been raised by Honorable Singh, that we further need the report which has subsequently been submitted, I think yesterday, of the Budget Office. And so it obviously means that our work as a subcommittee is not conclusive to bring to you, Chair, and the Rules Committee. We will have to go back and attend to that. That's one. Two, on the issue of the reintroduction of the interpellations, the recommendations as discussed in the subcommittee was that what we have currently, we think that we should stay with it in terms of what you call the mini plenaries, and that further work must be done as the recommendations are indicating as to what is needed to refine, improve that type of work with the discussion on the interpellations. So I think we must also allow that to take place as things stand. This Rules Committee or the subcommittee is not submitting a reintroduction of the interpellations, because that's a matter that we're attending to. So the current status quo remain. That's how we should understand it. The third point here, which was just my clarity, is on point number 3, Mr. Castle, under the background, which you emphasized on those issues. It must be a parliamentary background, and a blurred picture of the member without statement and so on. The only clarity, Chair, I want to raise here is how that is synchronized with what each presiding officer reads when we start the virtual session, where it says, because it's a technical issue that there must be consistency, where you say if a member is going to speak, the camera must be switched on and so on. I got to a bit of a difficulty there in one of the mini plenaries. So now that the rules are saying this, we should make sure that what gets read by a presiding officer becomes consistent with this. I'm just checking if that has also been attended to in terms of the text that we read at the start of each sitting. Otherwise, if it's not corrected, it could still create a problem. Otherwise, I am in support, Chair. Having said all of that, I do want to having said all of that, I do want to move for the adoption of the reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kianki. Thank you. I fully agree with you. maybe let me allow the other honorable members who had their hands up, because what I want us to suggest to us is that on those areas where we agree on, which are emanating from the work of the rules of the review subcommittee, we should adopt that report, and minus those areas like the one you have raised, which is the PBO report, which was only circulated the other day. So I do want to, so that to allow the reviews committee to look into that report. So let me then take more hands, honorable members. Honorable Dr. Lotred, followed by... Yes, continue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Speaker. I want to support my Chief Whip in terms of the interpellations, and that we be very careful not to, or to make sure that it does not just disappear, because I do think it has a very, very important role to play. For the rest, I have been covered, except for the one thing, Mr. Kasu, just on the placards point. We just have to make sure in terms of the grammar, because as I read it, it doesn't make sense, because it's non-dangerous. If you can perhaps just go back to that particular rule, so that it is very clear and we don't contradict ourselves. Speaker, I don't know if that is possible.
Yes, please put the slide on the decision on the screen, please, honorable member.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Right, it's that one, yes. Point 2, not to bring non-dangerous, that is with a hyphen, or threatening objects, placards, because we already have nor dangerous or threatening in point 1. So I'm not quite sure about the non-dangerous or threatening, because it's, to me, it's a double repetition of that. So I'm not quite sure. Maybe it can be explained. Maybe I'm just not understanding it correctly.
Okay, I hear you, Dr. Lotred. I will now invite Honorable Papo. I will not recognize you right now, Deputy Chief Whip Jakude, because you are the chair of this committee, and I would like you to clarify all the other issues which members are going to raise from your report. Okay. So now, yes.
Speaker, on point E3, there are two options there. One is that we should reduce the questions from 10 to 4 per minister. The other one says 5. This rules committee must choose which one we have to choose. We have to take. Are we choosing 4 or 5? Because that's the two options which are being offered on item E3. That's the first issue we need to resolve. The second one, Member Janji is very clear. The rules subcommittee must consider the PBO report and then table a report in the rules committee. So it means the rules subcommittee must meet. Every member of the rules subcommittee must study that report and then make recommendations to the rules subcommittee, as he said. The other issues were agreed, except tightening the language and so on. But most of those issues were substantially discussed by the rules subcommittee. What I'm a bit surprised is this issue of the interpellations. The rules subcommittee says we are not going to have interpellations. We must strengthen what we have. Now, when we say it should not fall off, what do we mean? We must keep it hanging on the rules subcommittee agenda. That's the part I don't understand. But everything which Member Janji said is actually as agreed by the rules subcommittee.
Thank you very much, Honorable Papo. Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable Sheikh Imam. Okay. Honorable Dr. Mulder.
Good morning, Chairperson, good morning, colleagues. Just 2 points. The first one, the way I read the provision with regard to the placards, the 2 points, is a little bit different from, I think, the way that Dr. Lottridge reads them. The first one basically says weapons of any kind, neither dangerous or threatening objects or articles, nor replica of such may be brought to the chamber. And then the second one, basically my interpretation is the opposite. You can bring the following things into the chamber: non-dangerous or non-threatening objects or articles or placards, and then the qualification, you first need the permission or the approval of the speaker. I think that's how I would read that. I don't want to, perhaps I'm not assisting. I was just wondering where some red hard hats fit into this definition of objects. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dr. Mulder. Honorable Majodina, and then followed by the Deputy Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Good morning to all the honorable members. Honorable Speaker, I want to welcome the report from the subcommittee and further say on the issue of interpellations, I think the report is very clear that the committee is not really in support of that. Let's improve on what we have. And on questions from 10 to 5-4, I would go for an option of 4 per minister spread across the cluster. The second issue, this thing about weapons, dangerous, non-dangerous, the subcommittee must rework on that. It's quite confusing at the moment. For instance, in the Eastern Cape, the helmet, I was NEC for Public Works. When I was about to wear a helmet in the house, when I do my policy speech, I would apply from the speaker and say, I'm going to wear helmet today because I will be presenting my policy speech, or I'm going to wear the soccer kit because I'm in sport. I'm presenting my policy speech. So we must quantify under which circumstances. The vuvuzela can be a weapon that we bring because Bafana once in a while will win, then we bring vuvuzelas. So I'm saying we need just to quantify that. Other than that, posters, protesting posters, organization logos, they must not be allowed in the house at all. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party, Honorable Zakude.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Good morning, honorable colleagues. Honorable Speaker, let me start with the issue of the committee to oversee the president. We deliberated in the subcommittee with this matter until the Honorable Singh brought in the issue of involving the Parliamentary Budget Office analysis on the budget of the presidency to check where there are gaps and come up with a report that we received yesterday. And we agreed that we are going to take it back to the subcommittee for further processing after consultation with our political party. That's the issue of the committee to oversee the presidency. Then the issue of interpellation, as the Honorable Member Janji, Honorable Chief Whip, Honorable Pap said, we dealt with this matter. Yes, we didn't agree because in that subcommittee we don't take decisions, but we made it clear that the current the mechanisms that we currently have, we must strengthen them and use them. We cannot bring back interpellations. So that one we dealt with is no longer going back to the subcommittee. Then on the issue of placards, an object of any kind, we said that should not be allowed in the house unless prior permission is given by the Speaker with regard to cultural objects. That's how I understood it in the subcommittee. So if it needs to be taken back to the subcommittee, it can, but I think we dealt with this matter. So it's only the capturing of that, of the issue in the report. Then the background of members, yes, that is agreed. We agree with the report. Then, what is it? Then questions to ministers. We said the questions must be spread across the cluster ministers on the day. I agree with the 4, because currently what we have, Honorable Speaker, is that we will have one minister who will be having many questions to respond to, but other ministers will have none. They will come to the House to respond to questions only to find that there is no question to respond to. So we said the questions must be spread across the cluster ministers. So that is what, Honorable Speaker, I wanted just to clarify. We accept the report and we move that the report be adopted, with the exception that the issue on the committee to oversee the presidency, which we dealt with, and we indicated in the subcommittee that we have committees that are in place to do so. So that one must be taken back to the subcommittee to refine it with the to be dealt with regard to the report that we received yesterday. We are still going to look into that, Honorable Speaker. It's still work in progress. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Chief Whip of the Majority Party. My understanding, Chair, of what the Deputy Chief Whip has raised is that, for instance, amongst others, if you look at the PPO report, you will see that there's a lot that we need to engage on. And maybe it will also assist us to clarify which ones of the areas are not subjected in the office of the presidency, are not subjected to an oversight process, because most of these, as already alluded to, are areas which are attended to by the different committees. So in the context of that discussion, finalizing that discussion on the oversight of the presidency, we then will look into the PPO report and read them together. And it will be better, colleagues, if we can just finalize this matter so that we're not stuck with one issue. So the next matter, I see.
Honorable Speaker, please. Honorable Speaker, please, my apology for this.
Yes.
Honorable Speaker, on the issue of background, having noted that the parliamentary background, there's something wrong with that. People fly on that parliamentary background. At times they become too pale. Like yesterday, the 2 members of DA, it was a bad image to look at. So can we also agree that the flag of South African flag can also be accepted? The ministers at times they connect whilst they are also in their offices, and their background, those backgrounds are department backgrounds, and they are government backgrounds. So if we can also allow that because the background of parliament, it depends on your connectivity. Otherwise, it makes mockery out of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chief Whip. The only hand I have not recognized here before I allow Mr. Paso to speak is that of Honorable Kwa. Honorable Papo, you've spoken. Will you please lower your hand? Not unless it's a new point. Is it? Honorable
Speaker, Chair, thank you. Speaker, thank you very much. Well, from where I'm sitting, I would be in favor of 5 instead of 4 questions for more accountability instead of less. But I'll respect any outcome of democracy where people outvote us. That's fine. The second issue, Speaker, is perhaps instead of tasking the... I'm okay with the decision to say we need to look at the PBO report and decide the way forward. But also the involvement of the PBO, to me, provides an interim solution to some of these challenges that we're facing. We could make sure that in the meantime, while the Rules Committee is trying to determine whether they should oversight committee or committee to oversee the work of the presidency, that the PBO is then tasked annually to do as it usually does for the finance cluster committees, where it would do an analysis of the budget of the presidency in order to facilitate oversight and decision-making as political parties that are represented in parliament and parliamentarians as we engage with the budget vote 1 discussion. I think it would be an interim solution in the meantime so that we don't leave that gap while trying to decide as to what to do. But we also ensure that oversight is strengthened over the presidency through that type of information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kwankwa. Honorable Lisuma.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. My apologies for delay of unmuting myself. I think it's fair what the Honorable Chief Whip of the majority party has raised, that sometimes you find members of the executive unable also to posture themselves in the background of parliament because they are used to parliamentary departmental one. We can be flexible on that so that at least there must be a department or parliament for all of us who are non-executive must be a parliament one, but without excluding them because they are also members of parliament, just to make sure that at least there is an expected agreed background, not the bookshelves and everything else. Thank you very much. The rest, I support the recommendation and slight amendments from the Rules Subcommittee that have been presented. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Lisuma. Honorable Chief Whip of the majority party, is it the old hand? Legacy hand or?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's a legacy hand. I'm sorry, Speaker.
Okay, those of you who have legacy hands, then please lower them. Honorable Kula.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Let me first say I agree fully with the report. I only think one of the things that we need to do, in light of an understanding of the kind of people we sometimes deal with in the House, that the subcommittee of rules would need to expand where we speak about dangerous weapons. Because in some instances, this form of protestation will not come in the form of placards, but in other times will come in other forms, for instance, in branded t-shirt. So we need to, the subcommittee on rules need to expand what would constitute a dangerous weapon in terms of coming into the sittings of the House. But in as far as all the other issues, I think we are fine with the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kula.
Please note me.
Do you
Honorable Kula. Machozi, please note me, Speaker.
Okay, I didn't see your hand. I'm sorry, Honorable Machozi. Honorable Papo, is it the legacy hand or?
No, it's not a legacy hand. I just wanted to second the Chief Whip. The 4 was not less accountability, saying in a session of 12, 13 questions, let at least have maximum of 4, because some ministers expect 18 questions, we deal with 12, 5, 6, 7 questions go to one minister. So I don't think what Member Kwankwa and the Speaker, the Chief Whip are saying are different. Just the Chief Whip is saying, let's give more ministers questions to respond to. So it's not diametrically opposed, but I would say ministers themselves must still try to use the parliamentary one, but I think there must be flexibility on others because some don't even try. even if they have the background. So I'm just saying that flexibility, I think the Chief Whip suggested is okay, but it makes room for problems when they happen.
Thank you, Honorable Papo, Honorable Majosi, and followed by Honorable Mr. Kaso.
No, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Good morning, all honorable members. Do not apologize, Speaker. I don't have an icon of raising a hand. I'm not sure what's happening with my gadget. Please, apologies because I've got a bad network. So I will keep my video off. Firstly, Speaker, is to maybe agree with the sequence of fairness in terms of ministers responding to questions. I would think if maybe we give 4 each minister, then we've got 16 questions that maybe we might cover in that period of 3 hours. So I would then second the fact that maybe we do have those 4 for each, and it will also depend on who allocates the questions. Then they will see which questions are there and on all clusters and departments, and then see that do submit questions all the time in different departments, so they will allocate accordingly. And also maybe, Speaker, in the subcommittee, when they also discuss some of the other things in terms of ministers responding to questions, the fact that, I mean, we pose these questions because we want to find responses and answers so that we are able to work together with ministers to find the solutions for all South Africans. But some would come into the House and then possess this bad attitude that would then bring the House into disrepute, and the decorum of the House then it's not maintained. So maybe a plea as well that we come up with a mechanism that ministers must be told that when you come into the House to respond, you come to the House to respond to questions. You don't come to respond to the political party, because then the difference is there. Ministers must come to respond to questions that are posed, so that we keep the decorum and we are able to move with respect in terms of answering and posing follow-up questions. Also, the Chief Whip of the IFP, Honorable Singh, did give me a report that on vote 1 confirmed the receiving of preliminary report on budget office, that the IFP has indeed received that report. Thank you, Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaso.
Madam Speaker, mine is just on the issue of dangerous, non-dangerous items. If my colleagues can place that rule on the screen, I won't be long at all. I think Honorable Mulder is quite correct. It's non-dangerous or non-threatening objects. Maybe we'll just insert the none before threatening objects. And honorable members, I just want to just give you an example. When we have budget speeches, you see the plants that are brought in by the minister there to cover the auto queue. In some instances, the minister would bring pot plant. That's a non-dangerous, non-threatening object. In all those instances, the minister would have sought the approval of the speaker beforehand. A member may wish to bring an item, an object, just to demonstrate or illustrate a point when they give a speech in the House. So I'm raising this point because if we confine that only to cultural objects, it means that we are actually undoing all these examples that I've given. So I just want to say we just need to think carefully about that. Secondly, I accept that there may be a need to clarify some of the issues, but the rules will not be able to provide for every eventuality. Once we give a list, your list will never be conclusive. So again, we just need to be alert to that. Because the issues about Makarabas have been raised and other issues, but the rules will not be able to cover all these issues. So, Ma'am, I just thought I should raise that. We will need clarity whether we are adopting this particular intervention, or we are referring it back to the subcommittee, except that if we don't adopt it here, there will be no regulation for placards currently. Thank you, ma'am.
Honorable Speaker.
I will just check now Speaker's connection, honorable members. My apologies. Just give me a moment.
Am I audible, honorable members?
Yes, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, honorable members. I was just saying, please, honorable members, this is a very important rule that's being introduced here. I would love us, because now it has been clarified. There was an issue of grammar earlier on, but Honorable Paso has also clearly elaborated on the rationale behind an adoption of such a rule. I would like to propose that we adopt this particular rule, honorable members. If there's anything else which needs to be corrected, let it be done. But in principle, as we adopt the report, this particular rule should be amongst those which are adopted, so that at least we have something. We have a rule that prohibits what you term,
placards.
No, I don't even want to make reference to that. Generally, something that will make all of us to behave in a mature political manner, something that will demonstrate high levels of political maturity and not any kind of misbehavior. So I think that's what I'm trying to do. To say. Yes, Honorable Takute.
Honorable Speaker, with the clarification that Mr. Paso gave us, I move for the adoption of that rule. Thank you very much.
Honorable Dikgali supports.
I think the speaker is frozen again.
I will, let me see what can be done. I'm trying to fix this problem.
And a member is not there, then I'm bound to proceed and recognize other members so that we complete and finish our processes, our meeting. So I see a number of hands, and I'm assuming that these hands are in support of this particular rule also being adopted as we are dealing with the report, with the adoption of the report.
Speaker, can you take a hand?
Yes, I did offer you an opportunity. You did not respond. And I've just said now, please, honorable members, once you have raised your hand, please make sure you remain next to the gadget so that once you are recognized, you're available to express yourself. Thank you.
I'm afraid, Speaker, I think the connection issue is on your side. We had lost you there for a while. So you weren't audible on our side.
When I recognized you, the challenge has been solved. So
nonetheless, Speaker, it's all right. I agree in principle regarding the introduction of the rule. I do also, just for my clarity, so I don't misunderstand the outcomes of this decision. My understanding is that the Rules Committee will either accept, reject, or refer back a matter to the subcommittee. If I'm understanding correctly, that indeed the introduction or reintroduction of interpellations has been rejected, just so that it's for my own records. Other than that, I think the rules around object is supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kwakube. My understanding is that that particular proposal, indeed, it's not a matter which is inconclusive. It is a matter which has been concluded in that in the course of the discussions, even in the review committee, the issue of questions to ministers has been discussed, issues of mini plenaries, which these are the fora which provide opportunity for members of parliament to engage with members of the executive. And therefore, it has been agreed that it is not necessary to reintroduce, to go back to interpellations. Mini plenaries are the forum for that. Questions to ministers are the forum for that. We've just now decided that we need to make sure that when we allocate questions to ministers, that all ministers are given of a particular cluster, are given the opportunity to respond to questions. So we're ensuring that there's equilibrium in that area. Honorable members, shall we then proceed? Shall we proceed?
Honorable Speaker, I've got my hand up.
Honorable Sheikh Imam, I'm sorry. Honorable, when I recognized you, you didn't come in.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Yeah, I'm in support of this, but I just want to raise my one concern, and that's the abuse of points of order. My understanding is this, that once you've ruled on a point of order, no one should be entitled to stand up on the same point again. And that's where there appears to be a lot of abuse, where member after member will stand up on exactly something that you've already ruled on. And I think some measures must be put in place to prevent that. And then the second thing is this: once a question is asked and the minister responds, there is no provision in the rules that if you're not satisfied, you can raise points of order or raise the fact that the minister has not actually responded. There must either be some other process put in place to accommodate that, but let us also put measures not to abuse the processes in the sitting for the purposes of delaying or disruption. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable members, I don't think there's a problem with that. I'm sure in dealing with issues of questions in the subcommittee, you must have considered the matter. Can I get clarity, Honorable Shakute, before I proceed to Honorable Korenhoff? Or Honorable Korenhoff, as part of the subcommittee, would you be able to assist me? Honorable Korenhoff, can you hear me, honorable members?
Yes, yes, Honorable Speaker.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous because the network keeps on, tripping in and out. So I'm very sorry. That's why you hear me raising my voice.
Thank you, Speaker.
Korenhoff, yes.
We had an extensive discussion on the subcommittee report. You already have a proposal for the adoption of the subcommittee report, and I formally want to second the adoption of the subcommittee report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Korenhoff. The report of the subcommittee has been adopted, and the report of the subcommittee is not just adopted, it has been seconded. So we proceed then to deal with the next item on the agenda. The next item on the agenda is an item which I had proposed at the beginning of the meeting, that we remove it from number 5 and put it at number 6. We are now going back to item number 5. Item number 5 is consideration of Parliament's response to the report of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture. So that's where we are now, honorable member. Now, may I just remind honorable members again that this report too was presented at the meeting of the 4th of November. Ours now is to tease out areas where we require clarity and proceed to adopt the report. So there you are, honorable members. I'm giving Mr. Kaso an opportunity to not to go through everything, just deal with the recommendations, Mr. Kaso, because we had dealt with the report. We are now going to look at the total sum of the recommendations. Thank you, Mr. Kaso. Proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We'll ask the colleagues to go straight to the report recommendations. We start with the first recommendations. These are recommendations. The first lot deals with recommendations to do with parliamentary oversight and accountability. So the first recommendation is what we've just discussed now, that there needs to, where the recommendation says there ought to be a committee on the presidency, oversight on the presidency, and the matter is currently before the Rules Committee. So we go to the next one. The second one is where the Commission recommends that we need to introduce a constituency-based but still proportional representative system, which would enhance the capacity of members to hold the executive accountable. And the Commission is saying this must be considered. And we are proposing here that the Committee on Home Affairs is the best committee to deal with this matter, and of course its NCOP counterpart when the time comes for that. But we're also making the point that currently there is an electoral bill which is in the system. Of course, does not quite address some of the elements of this recommendation, but that is what we are proposing here. Just to say, honorable members, those may not have been here last time, we're dealing with process at this point, not so much with substance of the recommendations. The next one, recommendation number 3, please. Yes. Here, we should consider whether it would be desirable to enact legislation which protects members of parliament from losing their party membership merely for exercising their oversight duties reasonable and in good faith. And again, we are saying that the Committee on Home Affairs would be the committee that deals with that if there is a view that the principle of this recommendation is supported. All right.
Oh, yes, and Lord.
Recommendation number
4. Wait, you'll have an opportunity to comment. Yes, proceed, Honorable Kaso.
I didn't realize that I had.
Honorable Member.
Recommendation number 4. Here, the Commission recommends that consideration be given to amending the Intelligence Services Oversight Act 40 of 1994. And honorable members, this really deals with the reporting obligations of that committee, the Standing Committee on Intelligence, where there is a concern that during the transitional period between parliaments, end of one parliament and coming into being of another parliament, there are fault lines when it comes to reporting by that committee. And therefore, we are saying that the committee, it should be referred to that committee to consider the principle, because that committee cannot introduce legislation, consider the principle of that, and consider whether there's a need to amend the legislation. And then the next recommendation, 5, that Parliament must allocate adequate funds so that portfolio committees are able to do their work. We read portfolio committees to include select committees. Of course, we accept that in the majority of cases, the chairpersons who appeared before the commission were chairpersons of portfolio committees, committees of the NA. We note here that there are ongoing conversations with the executive on the issue of the funding of Parliament and the need for more funds to enable Parliament to conduct its function. And here we are saying the matter should be with the executive authority of Parliament, the accounting officer, and of course the Joint Standing Committee on the Financial Management of Parliament. The next recommendation, recommendation 6. Here the issue is the upskilling of the research and ensuring that our technical capacity is strengthened in order to assist, to help committees. And I made a point previously that the Commission does say in its report that it did not conduct a detailed study on this matter. So but yes, they still thought that they should make the point that our research and technical capabilities need to be strengthened. And therefore, it's an administrative matter, and we are saying it must be referred to the Secretary to Parliament to attend to the issue. Recommendation 7. The issue here is about late submissions by the executive, and the same with the issue of recommendation 8. Parliament should consider whether there is a need to legislate on the issue of reports by a representative of the executive to Parliament. And we're saying the rules committees of the two houses, including the joint rules, are the best mechanisms to attend to this, to establish whether there's a need to improve the rules or there is a need to introduce legislation. Point number 8. Parliament needs to make clear, or 9, non-attendance by ministers and others scheduled to attend portfolio committees will not be tolerated, and to ensure that consequences are visited on those who offend without adequate cause. And again, we're saying the rules committees are the best placed structures to deal with this issue. We've just dealt now with the issue of delayed replies to questions. We have dealt with the need for ministers to be able to have opportunity to respond to questions. And so we're saying this structure is best placed to deal with that. Recommendation number 10. The issue of tracking and monitoring of implementation of House resolutions and decisions of Parliament. We have reported that there are manual systems that track and monitor, and of course that system still needs to be strengthened because it's really it does work, but really it can be better. It has to be better, and we need to find a way to integrate the work that comes out of the House and the work that comes out of committees, because sometimes, let me just make the point, sometimes the minister would respond to a House resolution in a committee of Parliament, and that would not have come through the House, that would have agreed to the report to which the minister is responding. So that area needs strengthening. So presiding officers, House chairpersons for committees, and the Secretary to Parliament are the structures to deal with this matter. Recommendation number 11. Here, there's a recommendation to establish an oversight and advisory section to provide advice, technical support, coordination, tracking and monitoring. This is a recommendation that is in our oversight model. So the Commission basically is saying this recommendation in that model must be activated. It's a matter that the Secretary to Parliament is alive to, because the issue, honorable members, is really the issue is capacity. Whether you do that through establishing a new section or you strengthen the existing section, that's a decision for the accounting officer to make. So the Secretary of Parliament is the one to deal with that matter. Recommendation number 12. Here, the principle of a mandatory accountability, and it also relates to the issue of a law. I think the CODA report spoke of Accountability Standards Act that could be looked into. A mandatory accountability really is about ensuring that you don't just identify issues, but there are consequences that follow that. I'm paraphrasing that. Consequences that follow that. And that we need to look into that as Parliament. And we're saying that the Rules Committee of Parliament, Joint Rules, would be the best body to decide whether we need an oversight act or accountability standards act as was proposed, to make sure that ministers are held accountable legally, just in addition to what you have in the Constitution, for not responding to decisions of the House or the Houses of Parliament. All right, recommendation number 13. And basically here they're saying if it is not our wish to have legislation here, we should improve our rules. And this is the matter for the Rules Committee to discuss, to deal with in terms of the merits of that. The next one, 14. Here the Commission recommends that consideration be given to members of the opposition this is about escalation of issues to the leader of government business and also to the president where there is non-compliance. There is a degree of that is obtaining at the moment, honorable members. When ministers do not reply to questions in terms of the timelines in the rules, the speaker writes to those ministers, but also writes to the leader of government business to say these ministers have not complied with the rules. In respect of the ministers, the speaker would write and say, give me the reasons why you have not responded within the time frames. That is a mechanism that was agreed to by this body, and we recently had this committee recently had a discussion on the matter. So we continue strengthening this mechanism. But we're saying the Rules Committee is the best body to deal with that matter. 15. Here is about possibly having more opposition parties, members of opposition parties, appointed as chair of portfolio committees. This is what the commission says. And again, we're saying the Rules Committees are the bodies to deal with that matter. And the Corruption Watch appeared before the commission, and some of their recommendations were that the appointment process of office bearers in bodies like, for instance, your Chapter 9 institutions, it needs to be reviewed to create public participation, multi-stakeholder participation in the process. And therefore, the commission was basically saying they agree with what Corruption Watch is saying, and Parliament should consider those recommendations so that we can make them part of our rules or guidelines when we make appointments to these bodies. Honorable Speaker, those are the recommendations in relation to oversight or parliamentary mechanisms. You will advise me, maybe if I should go to the rest where I deal with matters that are going to portfolio committees.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paso. Am I audible still?
You are, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you. Honorable members, those are the recommendations, 16 recommendations emanating from the Zondo Commission report. We, as I said last time at the meeting of the 4th, Mr. Paso did take us through these recommendations. Is there any problem with regards to the status of each one of the recommendations as proposed by the research team? You'll see that there is a recommendation and then you have the status. In other words, how should we deal with that particular issue and what the situation is currently? So can we then proceed, if it's agreed, honorable members, to adopt these recommendations? Honorable Kwangwa.
You can make your submissions. Listen to the meeting. I raised my hand before you finished making your submission. You were talking. Sorry, I wanted to finish.
Sorry, I didn't. I recognize you. It's okay.
No, I'm saying just a brief reflection, Chair, if I may, on this recommendation. It's a bit that of the things that we have always spoken about during budget vote 2 debates in the House. And that although we have been saying these things for many years, we actually never got around to implementing some of these recommendations. One of the issues that, for example, we'll talk about is it's not a question of Parliament just strengthening research, technical capabilities or support with respect to portfolio committees, but even at caucus level, that is also right. And we agree with the rest of them and how they should be handled and processed going forward. And I suppose that we'll interact with them once they get to the relevant stage where the Rules Committee is able to do something about them. I'm not too sure, though, that whether the flagging of Corruption Watch is appropriate instead of us talking about strengthening stakeholder engagement and public consultations on decisions that we make, because if we start singling out one NGO, whatever they are, then it becomes problematic from even an ideological perspective in society. I'm also not sure whether I make this submission mindful of the fact that this recommendation. But my understanding of political processes and how we move forward with it, processes we agree upon, those are decisions of politicians and compromises after having considered mixing certain issues that until a particular point in time. But I think it's premature to have those discussions now, Chair. I was just reflecting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kwankwa. Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, let me first and foremost welcome the processes that Mr. Paso have just unpacked on taking forward these resolutions. Generally, the recommendations from the Zondo Commission, in a way, they are also trying to strengthen Parliament and some weaknesses that Parliament has in its system. It is also looked at with much appreciation, of course. However, some of the issues that are raised, they have constitutional implications, and therefore referring them to various committees, it is going to assist where they are going to be looked at and be processed accordingly, and we all input on that. So I agree with this outlined way forward on the matter, and if we could just have a time frame for how long are we going to get the reports in terms of this? Because we must treat this Zondo Commission or State Capital Commission recommendations in a particular way. So I think the Rules Committee has a responsibility here. If we are saying time frame must be about 6 months or so, that we get reports from each and every committee, what is that they are recommending, so that we don't leave it as open-ended. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party. Chief Whip of the Opposition Party.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I'm in agreement with Honorable Majordina in as far as timelines are concerned, because, you know, we can be in broad agreement about where these recommendations fall under. But unless we've got timelines, then they are simply a diagnosis of the problem and not really, a roadmap at when we are going to arrive at some of these recommendations. For instance, I want to get to the nub of recommendation 14 in particular. I think that it's not entirely enough to simply say, this is the issue of whether written questions are responded to on time or not. I would like to implore that when we look at recommendation 14, we also look at the quality of the responses that are given, particularly by ministers and especially in oral question sessions. Because currently the rules don't make provision for if a minister answers or does not answer a question. There's a reason why there are questions that are posed, and if those questions aren't answered, then the entire thing is pointless. So I would like us to expand a little bit more about what recommendation 14 seeks to do. It's not about simply saying questions must be answered within 10 days. There also needs to be a way to strengthen the way in which oral questions are also answered, the substance in which they are answered, and I think that that's something that should be addressed. I think that the way in which the recommendations and the resolutions are grouped is fine, but unless there are timelines and report back mechanisms, then we're not going to get anywhere with them. And also just lastly, the issue around opposition chairs. There isn't really much of a direction there as to who's going to particularly deal with that. I mean, it can come to the Rules Committee, but I mean, the reality is that that requires an entire overhaul of looking at how oversight is done in Parliament. So perhaps also another, substantiating on that in particular is important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Two issues, honorable members. You've noted, I'm sure, the issue of the timelines. and for the implementation of these recommendations, which we have agreed to adopt. And then number two, the issue which did arise earlier on when we were discussing the review subcommittee work, when there was the issue of around questions, and then there was an issue, somebody raised what happens, I think Honorable Majosi, what happens when a member is not necessarily happy with the quality of the response of that question, to that question. And I would want us to agree that because it is one of the recommendations, say recommendation 14 is all related, that we allow, because recommendation 14 will be dealt with by both committees of the NA and the NCOP. So we allow for the rules committee to discuss that matter, the subcommittee to come and make a proposal on the matter. Honorable Lisuma.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Let me firstly appreciate the presentation and also agree with the Chief Whip of the Majority Party precisely on this one, that in terms of the time frame, that 6 months will be proper, noting that we are just going for recess, so which means December and January you cannot include it because the matters need to be referred appropriately to committees. Without being tempted to engage on the presentation and the report, but just to say that you have covered me in terms of the questions vis-a-vis its quality, but also in terms of outer, of course, what is going to be reflected here is those NGOs that would have appeared before the Commission of State of Capture. The other one, Chair, which is my last point, is that of course, without being tempted as well, that it must be noted that as much as we can desperately want to share in terms of chairing the committees, but the constitutionalization of and the composition of the committees happens in the beginning of the term, and there's a formula that is used, and also there's a rationale in terms of how the executive is being structured as well, that probably there are some matters that are reflected here, which I'm recommending that in 6 months committees we should have finalized them and probably looking at them, noting that others have got constitutional implications, that probably others, they will need to be then for our legacy report to go to the 7th administration after 2024. Those are the few points that I just wanted to engage on, Honorable Speaker. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lisuma. Honorable, I see that there's a hand of Honorable Papo and Honorable Kyanki.
I think the issue of the quality of the questions, unless a minister, my understanding is that unless a minister answers yes, no, it's a subjective matter. For example, I've sat in the House where a member does a follow-up question, and that follow-up question is based on the policy positions of that party. The minister stands up and rejects that view, and then the member says it's a hostile attitude. You can't expect ministers to respond on the basis of policies of another political party. It has to be on the strategic plan, on the plans of the governing party. So I'm just saying we must also understand that angle. But obviously, if somebody, for example, the clumsiness of if a question is taken to a ministry, that question, the questions office and the ministries must then divert. The ministry must then inform the questions office that this question relates to another ministry. So that we don't have a minister responding in the House that this question relates to another minister. That should be handled long before the day of the question and answer session. But we cannot have a blanket view that the quality is a subjective issue. So it can be that because a member doesn't like an answer, therefore that answer is not should not have been given. It can be how are we going to, what is the measure which we're going to use in terms of saying. That's why I said unless somebody says yes, no, then there's a problem. But I think the sentiment is, I think it's correct, and we've had instances where things could have been handled far better. Secondly, is that in the portfolio committees, political parties will indicate their views on a whole range of issues. For example, the issue of opposition chairing committees, clearly that's going to be a problem. And there's no rule which says the opposition will chair SCOPA also. It's an agreement reached. So because in some legislatures, SCOPA is not chaired by the opposition. So I'm just saying that in those portfolio, select and standing committees, political parties will then express their views on a whole range of recommendations. But the report gives a very good guidance in terms of how the recommendations of the commission should be handled. And then the portfolio committees will then decide on how to handle them. Thanks.
Honorable members, I really thought that we will not get into the substance of these recommendations, but rather that, as proposed here by the technical team, that honorable members, we've now adopted the recommendations, that we will now agree on the timelines, and timelines of 6 months have been proposed by the Chief Whip, supported by Honorable Lisuma. So we now have a clear way forward on how we take these recommendations forward. And I would want to imagine that at the point when honorable members in that subcommittee discuss rule 4, the recommendation number 14, that there will be a discussion on this matter of the questions. But earlier on, as I said, we had agreed that the matter raised by Honorable Majosi is something which we can entertain, but I would like to request all of us that at this point, we are not discussing this report. What we are seeking is to clarify ourselves and agree on the way forward. The way forward is that the Rules Committee in the main is going to be seized with this matter, and the timelines of 6 months have been proposed. Can we then proceed on that note? I will entertain the hands which are here and close this matter. I will acknowledge you, Honorable Janki and Honorable Kwangwa, and then request Mr. Kaso to close the subject. Thanks.
No, thank you, Honorable Speaker. I am going to submit myself to your directive, and because I agree with it, that at this stage, we're not on the substance and merit of the issues. It is the process. And in that regard, along with the timelines that have been suggested by the Chief Whip of the majority party, there's an element that we need to factor in here, which Honorable Nkwanga would have raised in passing, that as part of that process, we do need to allow space for political parties to make their proper contributions in this process. And I make this point because the Commission made the recommendations, but the recommendations of the Commission cannot constitute them in a way dictating how a National Assembly or Parliament must do its business. The NA or Parliament must still process those issues because we are the lawmakers. There are certain things here that are recommendations that in a certain way seem to be reaching over that kind of an important aspect. The NA is allowed to do it, to develop its own processes of how it does things. You can't just take a recommendation and just run with implementation without properly processing that. And I think that must be respected. And therefore, in line with the process approach, I think that as the matters that go to the subcommittees, as they are attended to by a number of committees, we have to create that space where political parties are given that opportunity at whatever point to make these kind of concrete contributions to these. For some of the issues that are being recommended, go straight into the issues of the separation of powers, and we can't mix those issues. I just wanted to make that point, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Komudi. Honorable members, I now invite Mr. Kaso to round up this issue, and we proceed. We still have to deal with the President's plan of action, which was presented to us. And Mr. Kaso still has to take us through that together with the committee. Mr. Kaso?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We've taken note of the contributions by honorable members. Indeed, those matters that are to be handled by this committee, the Rules Committee, they will now be referred to the subcommittee. And Madam Speaker, it means that administratively we'll just have to increase our capacity that supports the subcommittee, so that the subcommittee can be properly seized with these issues. And it will also mean that dedicated time in the program of Parliament would need to be created for the subcommittee to meet to attend to these very important matters. No, thank you so much, ma'am. And of course, those issues that can only be dealt with by the Joint Rules Committee, the subcommittee of the Joint Rules Committee will have to deal with those issues. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. On that note, then, Mr. Kaso, I still hand over to you to present to us the plan of action as presented by the President and how we are to proceed with that one.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will request my colleagues to go straight to page number 17 of the document. Here, honorable members, we're dealing with how these matters should be processed. Again, it's a process recommendation. The plan from the executive has categorized these issues. We're dealing with criminal investigations and prosecutions in 5.1.1. Here we recommend that these matters, and of course, let me just explain the structure of the document. Again, it deals with the recommendation. It deals with activities that are currently underway in the domain of the executive. For instance, if I may, I'll give this one example. I will not repeat it going forward. Where the first one talks about these investigations that the NPA has enrolled 26 cases, declared 89 investigations, and charged 165 persons for alleged state capture-related offenses. So that is a progress report from the side of the executive that has come with the implementation plan. So our approach as Parliament is to exercise oversight on these issues that the executive says it's attending to. And therefore, we are recommending that these matters in 5.1.1 be referred to these structures: justice, and of course the NCOP counterpart. Go on, colleague. And then asset recoveries, we are recommending that all these things that the executive says are happening, these committees must be seized with those, monitor those, exercise oversight, and hold the executive accountable on the timelines, if there are any, that the executive has set for these matters. So justice, select committee on justice, and the standing committee on public accounts, those will be the relevant committees to deal with the issues of asset recoveries. Then referrals to other state entities, agencies, and executive authorities. Here we are recommending that the finance committee, public accounts committee, and the police committee must deal with this. Now, what this means, honorable members, is that there will need to be a lot of conferral between the various committees on these issues. There need to be a lot of coordination and joint oversight in some respects, and in others, joint reporting by these committees, so that Parliament can coordinate its approach to this. All right, the next one. Referrals to professional, regulatory, and other bodies. And here we are recommending that this be referred to the finance again, justice, and again to the Finance Committee. All right, 5.1.4 or 0.5, yeah, 0.5. Right. Matters that investigations by the IPIT, we're saying the Police Committee, and of course the NCOB will be the Security and Justice Committee, go down. Companies implicated in state capture. The Commission has also made broad adverse findings with respect to the conduct of a number of private entities, companies. And the CIPC is dealing with some of these issues, and National Treasury is dealing with these issues. We're saying trading industry, small business, and Finance Committee must deal with this. Okay, go on. And the issue of building capacity, the criminal justice system. Here, government has since 2018 embarked on far-reaching measures to restore the integrity and rebuild the capability of the country's law enforcement agencies. And here the activities are given of what has happened to date. And we are saying that the Justice Committee, Public Accounts Committee must be seized with this matter. Okay. Reforms to prevent future occurrence of state capture, creation of a permanent anti-corruption commission, and a public procurement anti-corruption agency. I think there was a concern here that there are pockets of institutions that deal with procurement and issues, and therefore you need to consolidate this. So we're saying these are the committees that must exercise oversight: justice, public accounts, and of course the NCOB counterpart. Go on. And here we, again, procurement, public enterprises, finance is recommended. Okay. Members will tell me if I must slow down. But yeah. And yeah, these are the other range of committees. Go on. 5.2.3, stabilizing and reforming state-owned enterprises. And here we are proposing that Public Enterprises Committee and its select committee must exercise oversight over this matter. All right? Yes. Response to abuses by the private sector, and need to amend the Companies Act so as to permit applications for a director to be declared delinquent, to be brought even before 2 years after the end of their directorship. Amend the Prevention and Corruption, the Combating of Corruption Act, amend the Political Funding Act to criminalize donations to political parties in expectations of access to contracts. Now, this one relates to us as Parliament. So it's a matter that the Rules Committee will obviously have to, because when we dealt with this bill, when it was a bill, we had an ad hoc committee that dealt with it. So we will need to decide how we process that matter, if at all there's a need. Of course, the Rules Committee must first discuss the principle of the matter, whether we do need actually to review the Act. And of course, if there's that view, then a committee must be established. I think I'm correct. It was an ad hoc committee, but if I'm not, we'll correct that. And here we're recommending the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services. Okay, go on, colleague. Reforming intelligence agencies. It's a matter for the Standing Committee on Intelligence. And of course, a draft bill has been drafted, or a bill has been drafted. Now, again, here we will need an ad hoc committee. Let me make the point again that the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence does not have lawmaking powers. So when a bill or a law has to be processed that affects that area, Parliament would establish an ad hoc committee to deal with the matter. Okay. Protection and incentives for whistleblowers. We're proposing these committees to deal with the issue. Go on. Restoring the South African Revenue Service, Finance will be the committee that deals with that. Improving measures to combat money laundering, Members will be aware that just yesterday we passed a law on money laundering in the House, and there is, of course, another one similar to this, which was before the police committee. It's now been reported on, and I understand it will be dealt with next week by the House. So at least this area is receiving urgent attention. Okay. Reform of the electoral system. We are aware, as I indicated, we've got the electoral amendment bill currently before Parliament, which will be finalized by the NCOP on the 29th. It has to come to the NA. We have a 10th of December deadline as issued by the court. Direct election of the president. No, don't go down. Of course, it comes from the commission. It's a matter that has constitutional implications, obviously, because it pertains to our electoral system. So if there is a political view that this matter needs to be visited and the current arrangement be reviewed, then it's a matter that these committees will have to deal with. In the main, the Constitutional Review Committee will be involved there to look at the merits of this matter. And of course, when it gets to lawmaking, it would probably be the Justice Committee and the Home Affairs Committee could also get involved. Okay. Creation of a criminal offense of abuse of power is a matter for because the Justice Committee Department says it will conduct some research on this matter. So the Justice Committee will have to exercise oversight of that one. Okay. The responsibility of President and Premiers for actions of ministers and executive. The executive has committed to conduct a review of the positions of those members of the executive implicated in wrongdoing in the report on a case-by-case basis in line with the discretion of the President. So if the matter, of course, it relates to ethics committee, when it gets to us, may it relate to ethics committee. We know that there are matters that have already been referred to the ethics committee, for instance. Matters that affect members and matters that affect members of the executive that have been referred to the ethics committee. But generally, the Joint Rules Committee and the Rules Committees will be seized with the principle of that matter. The interface between the executive and Parliament. Here, it's a matter that the leader of government business, the executive authority, would deal with, and also because we spoke about the resourcing of Parliament. So it's a matter that the executive authority is dealing with already about how Parliament can be resourced better. Okay, go on. Broader systemic reforms arising from the work of the Commission, strengthening the auditing system, professionalizing of the public administration. We are aware of the recent announcements that have been made about professionalizing that area, the issue of the terms of directors generals that have been reviewed. So the Committee on Public Service Administration would come in there, auditing system, the Committee on the Auditor General would come in there as well. To clarify the relationship between political authority and institutions they oversee, the induction of new ministers, relevant section of the ministerial handbook will be reformulated, and a code of conduct for special advisors will be developed. So that those are the issues that have to be attended. Okay, go down. All right. Here we basically deal with how to monitor this plan, and we are recommending that the House chairpersons for committees in the NA and the NCOP be responsible for monitoring the aspect of this that relates to portfolio and select committees, and that quarterly reports be provided to those offices, which obviously would then compile reports on these matters, on the progress that is being made by committees in this regard. Again, there may be a need to strengthen the administrative capacity of those offices. There is a recommendation that has been made about a possible commission that would exercise oversight over Parliament and of the executive. And we have indicated somewhere in the report that that's really a matter with huge constitutional implications, and we have some views on it if we were to deal with the merits of the matter, because it's really a constitutional matter, a serious constitutional matter. Speaker, that is the presentation on the recommendations on the plan by the executive, which we are presenting to the Rules Committee. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaso. Honorable members, this is the report. These are the recommendations, activities, and committees which will take charge of this work. I see the hand of Honorable Korenhoff, and then followed by the Chief of Whip of the Majority Party. Would you like to comment on the reports?
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Kasu, for the presentation. I think this implementation plan of Parliament is extremely important, both containing the recommendations from Parliament, from the Zondo Commission report, as well as a response plan from the President. And in my view, the two reports presented now into the Rules Committee go together. It was circulated to all members, so we all read through it. And in the previous meeting, even, we had a discussion. I think, Speaker, this implementation plan of Parliament is of great importance, not only to Parliament, but to the whole of our nation and our people. I would just suggest that we add a column, what we've discussed earlier, and that's a timeline for each of these committees to report if it carries your approval. And then I think, because it's we've studied it before and had the opportunity to go through the report, I formally propose that we adopt this, both the implementation plan of Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gert. Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we welcome this action plan, which is responding to the report. And I want to say this very categorically, Honorable Speaker, that processes that must unfold, they must be referred accordingly to certain committees. Like the Ethics Committee must do its work without even awaiting for 6 months. They must attend to issues and dispose them off. Issues that need law enforcement agency, they must just be dealt with by law enforcement agencies, so that we avoid to turn Parliament to be investigating state agencies which we are not empowered really to do that. Criminal cases must be dealt with or by those who are mandated through the Constitution to deal with that. The issue of committees to deal with all these matters that are referred to them, maybe in a programming committee, we must try to allocate time for this, because this is a special project, and committees have other mandates that they have than their normal mandate that they have. But I think we must increase the number of meetings for committees, and there must be meetings that are ring-fenced to deal with these recommendations, so for us to be able to meet the timelines. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable Kwahube, followed by Honorable Kwankwa.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, I just want to raise the issue around the monitoring of the implementation, and that that issue is only limited to House chairs. I would ask that it be perhaps more representative than that. The reality is that these findings and this implementation plan is the work of Parliament. And whether it is getting regular reports through the programming committee on the progress of the implementation, or else, or in any which else way, or whether it is even here in the Rules Committee, I think that simply just leaving it to the implementation monitoring to the House chairs perhaps is simply not good enough. And that we must build in a way to get regular feedbacks in a more open and transparent manner, and in more regularly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kwahube. Honorable Kwankwa, followed by Honorable Lisuma.
Speaker, thank you very much. I think Honorable Kwahube has actually taken the words directly out of my mouth, because I wanted to say that indeed, yes, it's important to leave it to the House chair of chairs to look into this matter, but it's also important that the House chair or the chairperson himself has accounts elsewhere to a forum such as this one for the work done, so that we're able to track progress as an institution. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kwankwa. Honorable Lisuma.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I must declare that I was not intending to raise my hand, but safe to say, one is that I agree with the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party, Honorable Matutina, that's one. But two, Chair, when we engage on some matters, sometimes I get so worried that we seem like we make other structures in Parliament as if they're not Parliament. For me, Chair, committees in the NAPC, we do receive committee schedules in terms of their activities and then their programs, as they are supposed to be, having gone through the chairs of chairs processes and other related processes. But all committee reports after the decisions, even the committee sittings, are open to the public. And I think there is a way to monitor that, because I'm worried where we create some of the forums and committees for who are intended to deal with certain issues and convert them then to also to run all the business of Parliament. We might not have that energy and time and space. But the point that the Chief Whip of the Majority Party raised to say that we must find a way in the program of Parliament to allocate more time in terms of days for committees, which will be dedicated for this process of this, if I may call it a special project, as it were, in terms of the state of capture and how to process the matters. I thought that's the best way. But secondly, which is my last point, is that my assumption is that Thursday, 3 times a month, are dedicated for caucuses of various political parties. Also, nothing stops political parties to invite any official that also gives support in various committees, also to make a presentation if there are gray areas, but following the proper processes. For me, I think for now, the systems that and the approach that we have agreed upon, it works. I know some other political parties like 50 or 150% might not is overstretched, but there are other ways to get that information, which already I've stated earlier on. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lisuma. Honorable Papo.
I second the Chief Whip. We must strengthen the portfolio, standing and select committees of Parliament, in our case, NA. Any attempt to weaken those committees through parallelism should not be acceptable.
Thank you very much, Honorable Papo. Honorable Kwankwa, is it your legacy hand or what? Honorable Kwankwa.
Legacy hand, Chair, sorry.
Okay, thank you very much, honorable members. In that case, we've agreed, honorable members, that one, we need to be very strong in monitoring of the implementation of this plan of action, and that the House chair of chairs will look into the matters, and that he will need a collective to work with if it is possible. And then the last matter raised by Honorable Papo is that of strengthening of both the portfolio committees and the select committees. So really, what has happened here, honorable members, is that this report is linked directly to the report of which we had discussed earlier on, where we've even agreed on the time frames. We are not saying the time frames of 6 months, for instance, all of this work shall have been completed, but at least there should be regular reporting on progress made with regards to both the recommendations which we've adopted from the Zondo, from the Justice Zondo Commission report, the state capture report. Number 2, the issue of this plan of action as presented to us by the president. Importance of monitoring therefore. That's one of the issues which have been raised. So, honorable members, the long and short of it is that we've attended to both reports, both the recommendations, both the plan of action of the president, and we have adopted a plan, a framework of 6 months for the actual work to be done. If people have not finalized their work by then, at least there will be some report on progress. If you look anyway at some of these issues which are presented here, you'll see there's somewhere where, for instance, if a piece of legislation has to be developed, where it is said by end of 2023, that shall have been done, and so on. So, where it's a responsibility.
Switch off your video, speaker, to maximize your connectivity.
Hey. Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you very much. I think there is a problem. I've just lost Ilentusan. Usually it continues, sometimes it switches off. But if I lose a network later, I'll ask one of the presiding officers to take over the chair. But right now, we are done with this particular report, honorable members. We then proceed, honorable members, to deal with the next item on the agenda, which will be presented to us by Mr. Kaso, and that is the consideration of rule formulated in terms of Rule 6 to extend reporting period of the independent panel. Mr. Kaso?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would ask the colleagues to just display the rule. What we are doing here, honorable members, the rule says that a rule formulated in terms of Rule 6 remains valid until considered by the House on a recommendation of the Rules Committee. Speaker had to formulate this rule to enable the Section 89 panel to have more time to consider the matter before it. And in terms of the rules, this rule must now serve before this committee, which must then make recommendations to the House. And we would want to make a recommendation that this committee can decide to either refer it to the subcommittee on the review of rules before it is finalized and before the matter goes to the House. So, ma'am, let me pause there for now. The Madam Speaker may want to come in maybe with some recommendations, and then I will come back if I need to, if Madam Speaker invites me to come back. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Honorable members, you'll recall that the report of the independent panel should have been presented to us by the what? It was on the
17th, ma'am.
17th. Then we then received a letter from the panel requesting that they be allowed to an extension of plus 13 days which means that the report will only come in on the 30th of November. However, honorable members, as Mr. Kaso has already indicated, this in the rules that we do not have a provision for an extension. We do not have a provision for this kind of eventuality. So what we discussed with the team, Mr. Kaso's team, and then they agreed that, Honorable Speaker, you can use actually rule number 6. Rule number 6, as you all know, talks about unforeseen eventualities. So this is the rule which I have used to grant an extension to the independent panel. There isn't such a provision in our rules that you may give them X amount of time or not. So based on that, honorable members, we then agreed that it is best for us to present to you to look into the matter, because clearly there is a lot of work which will still happen. I mean, we never knew we'd find ourselves in a situation where we would have a panel investigating the public protector and now this one and so on. So what we request you as the honorable members is to approve that there be a rule which deals with this particular issue. It shouldn't be just left to the Speaker of the Assembly to make a determination. So that is where we are, honorable members. Any hands, honorable members? Honorable members, are you here? Honorable Gert.
Can I just inquire what is the process if this in a rules committee now adopt this rule? Can Mr. Kasu just indicate to us what is the process to be followed? Because we don't have time. The 30th is just around the corner. Thank you.
May I, ma'am?
Yes, Mr. Kasu.
No, honorable members, there is no issue at all. This rule remains valid until the House has considered it. So the 30th of November is not affected by the Rules Committee having discussions on this matter. So the rule is valid. So what basically we want to propose is that maybe we need to make this rule official by having, because currently, as it stands now, it basically says that the Speaker must make the determination. We avoided giving a time frame by which an extension can be, in terms of which an extension can be given. So it just gives the power to the Speaker. Now, Speaker is saying that we need something more concrete on the matter. So the recommendation is that the subcommittee must concretize this matter and give a specific period. We did not want to assume that we should give the same 90 days that we gave to the previous process in terms of the Section 194 process. So to concretize this matter, and then, of course, when it is finalized, it then goes to the House. So there's no lacuna, because the rule remains valid until the House has dealt with it. So the 30th is not affected at all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mr. Kaso and Honorable Gert. Just to say, in addition to what Mr. Kaso has said, Honorable Gert Koleno, for now, there is no indication anyway that there may be a request for an extension. In fact, the 13 days and the date was actually given to us by the panel itself. They are the ones who said they require only 13 days and that the report will be handed over on the 30th of November. So for now, we are not under any form of pressure. Thank you. Honorable Kwahube, followed by Honorable Lisuma.
Yeah, good afternoon, Speaker. Look, I certainly am in support of making concrete what is implicit and making it explicit in the rules, because I don't think that we must assume that this is probably the last time that we are ever going to have a committee of this nature. And to Mr. Klaso's point, I think that the function of this independent panel in terms of Section 89 is very different from that of the impeachment inquiry. And so I think that having a time frame there is not a bad idea, but I definitely supported going to the sub-rule committee so that we can put the correct wording. But I agree that we've got to make explicit what is implicit in the rules at the moment to cover ourselves for future eventuality. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kwahube. Honorable Lisuma, followed by the Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I think firstly, one should also appreciate the approach of an open door policy where you take structures of parliament into your confidence. For an example, when they requested an extension, you did request through the Chief Whip of the majority party also to advise or inform the Chief Whip's forum so that everybody is not taken by surprise, which one mostly welcome that one. But also the second is an idea of saying that let us not be event orientated. Moving forward, we must have something that assists you when you make a certain determination in such matters. And I agree that let's refer the matter to the subcommittee, rules subcommittee, to process it and look at the probabilities and everything, and then they make recommendations to us. With that, and also we are clearly that we are separating the matters. We're not dealing with the current matter, we're dealing with the future, so that there's no ambiguity in terms of the approach and all that. Other than that, I agree and accept your request to be agreed by this committee. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Honorable Lisuma. Honorable Masotina. Chief Whip.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, in agreeing with you that we need a concrete rule on this, but we quite appreciating the fact that you have been very much flexible and taking us on board. Honorable Speaker, if you could, through your office, assist the subcommittee by making submission based on the reasons that you received from individual members who were unable to serve in the independent panel, because some of them were concerned about the time frame that we give to such a panel and other issues that they've raised, so that if needs be that we have to look at that, it might assist us moving forward, that we must not ignore some of the reasons that made others not participate, but we must use that as a stepping stone towards tightening our system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chief Whip. We will do that, Honorable Chief Whip. We will do that because, honestly, I think I agree with Honorable Lisuma that we should not be event-driven. We should not take decisions on the basis of developments now. We are unable to do A because of this and that. Speaker, take this decision and that. It actually puts the Speaker, and I'm assuming anyone, it would put anyone in a very difficult position. I mean, other people will agree with you and say, look, it was a proper decision to take. I mean, what else could you have done? Others were saying, No, it raises suspicion. People were all over the place. People were in the media and challenging the panel itself and challenging the speaker for having granted. So it's important that everything we do is guided by the rules, so that we do not create unnecessary problems, tensions for ourselves as members of parliament. So, Honorable Chief Whip, I will do exactly that. Fortunately, we do have that list, and we do have a document where we have clearly outlined every reason which was given by all of those who were nominated by the different political parties to serve in this panel. So we will do that, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable Papo.
As I second the decision of the committee, but it's important that when the NAPC make decisions, like the extension decision, you can't have off-ramps and people going out and saying things which are not agreed, because this decision to give an extension was made by the NAPC. It was not a decision of the speaker. The NAPC agreed that based on the facts, that extension. So I think as people who believe in due process, we have to accept due process. When things are done in a procedural manner, let's not allow a situation where our personal feelings then take over, and then we try and override decisions of formal structures of the National Assembly like the NAPC. That's a comment I wanted to make, because that's lack of discipline.
Thank you very much, Honorable Papo. Thank you for that comment. Indeed, because when you bring a matter to the Chief Whip's Forum, and the Chief Whip's Forum engages you on the matter, and then you bring it to the programming committee now to approve the fact that a certain decision has been taken, and therefore the programming committee should endorse for purposes of programming that. You expect that because all parties are represented in these committees, that members of parliament will raise their challenges with the decision or with the recommendation at the forum where these issues are discussed, so that everybody is able to engage. Of course, this is politics, we understand, but I think it was unfortunate that after that kind of interaction with the WIPARI and that kind of interaction and endorsement by the NAPC, that then the matter was now out in the public, with people really creating a web of suspicion around, one, the integrity of the process itself, but also the integrity of the presiding officer in this instance. But I do agree, I therefore agree with you, Honorable Papo, when you say that. I would hope that in future, when such issues, sensitive issues, are brought to the WIPARI, that everybody will engage, which then takes me to the next point, and that is, honorable members who belong to the WIPARI must attend the Chief Whip's Forum. Members who are supposed to be members of the programming committee should be regular at the programming committee, to avoid a situation where there's misunderstanding and having to explain and clarify yourselves when issues have been properly processed through these structures. Thank you very much, Honorable Papo. My last hand, and I want to emphasize this last hand on the matter, is Honorable Kula.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I think, let me say, Honorable Speaker, that I also concur with what Honorable Papo has said. And I think the backlash that would be received by you and by extension the panel, to some of us, it is expected. But we must be comforted by the fact that we have not done anything that is contrary to the rules of the National Assembly. We have not done that. All the side issues that are there, that is not our focus. our focus remain on the task at hand, which is to ensure that we execute our responsibilities as members of parliament to the best of our abilities. And who would plead, Honorable Speaker, with members of different political parties, let's not go out there to unnecessarily politicize this matter with lies, because there is a perception in the house, there is a perception in the country to run with lies to the media and say the decisions that we are taking are either informed by this issue or that issue. For the first time, let's be bold and tell the truth for what it is. And we must say that we have got the full backing of us as the Rules Committee, that we understood that we have taken this decision informed by the facts, not by any other issues. We are not focused on the side show. We are focused on the task at hand, and we plead very much with all other political parties. Let's not politicize this matter unnecessarily. Let's allow the panel to do its job. Other matters will be dealt with where they are supposed to be dealt with. Let's not create unnecessary confusion. Let's not seek political clout using this matter. There's no basis for that. I think we are doing things by the books, because so we have got our full confidence and backing as this committee. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kula. Honorable members, I indicated that is my last hand on the screen here, and I think we have exhausted the issue. So I would want us to proceed to deal with the last item, which will be presented by, that's item number 8, which will be presented by Mr. Kaso, the report of the subcommittee on physical removal of member from the chamber. Mr. Kaso?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable members, in terms of Rule 203 of the NA, in fact, it starts with Rule 201. We have a subcommittee on physical removal of members, and the functions of this committee, Rule 203, the committee must consider the circumstances of the physical removal of a member from the chamber as reported to it by the Speaker, taking into account all relevant aspects, including the conduct of the member concerned, the ruling by the presiding officer, and the manner in which the member was removed. In carrying out its function, the subcommittee may exercise such powers as contained in Rule 167 as it may require. These are rules that relate to summoning people to appear before the committee, among other things. The subcommittee's mandate, concerning the circumstances referred to it, does not extend to disciplinary proceedings against the member, nor a formal review of the presiding officer's ruling. I think I want to put emphasis on this one because there are other structures where there is a need for sanctions, or there may be a need for sanctions. There you have the Powers and Privileges Committee that would deal with that. You could have the Ethics Committee that deals with that. But this one simply looks at whether the rules complied with, the conduct concerned, is it a conduct that the rules deal with, and then the committee reports. So there are 4 members who were referred to the subcommittee. This is on page 2 of the report. Is Honorable Keza, Honorable Paulson, Honorable Matenjana, and Honorable Mente. These members were removed from the House physically on the 30th of August, 2022. And of course, the Speaker submitted a report to the subcommittee detailing what these members had done that led to them being removed from the House physically. The subcommittee has studied the matters presented before it, looked at the rules, looked at the Powers and Privileges Committee Act, and of course the very conduct of the honorable members who were then removed from the House. And in the view of the subcommittee, the finding of the subcommittee is that there was sufficient evidence based on the revised Hansard and the Speaker's report to show that the members who were physically removed from the chamber had violated the rules of the Assembly. It further found that the disorder in the chamber affected not only the Speaker and Parliament, but also the South African public, as they had to wait for an inordinate amount of time to listen to the President's replies to members' questions. Now, there will be instances, honorable members, where the subcommittee would, in its wisdom, decide that matters should be referred to the Powers and Privileges Committee. But there will be instances where the subcommittee basically makes the finding that the rules were complied with. In this instance, by the presiding officer. In this instance, the subcommittee has chosen to just make the finding that the rules indeed were complied with, and there's nothing to be concerned, and the members order was restored in the House by removing the members from the proceedings of the House that day. When they refused to leave the House, then the production services, after the Sergeant at Arms, production services were called and they removed the member physically. And therefore the report is submitted to this committee. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paso. Honorable members, that is the report. The report is presented to you for consideration and for your information. Honorable Papo.
I just wanted to check whether the report gives space for the matter to be still referred to the Powers and Privileges, or it ends here for further management and possible action. That's the issue I wanted to get clarity. And if it allows, I would recommend that. That I'll suggest that the committee consider it, referring it there to curb those kind. I mean, if you read the report, the level of disorderliness it was so serious. And worse, we also had a report of the advocate on what happened to the PPS, assaults of some of those PPS members by some of the members. But I just wanted to get clarity that if that is allowed, then it be referred there. But if it ends here, that's fine.
Thank you, Honorable Papo. Honorable Fifth Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we accept the report. We were there in the House. We saw what happened. I wish to raise two things, as Honorable Speaker and members, that in the House there is a designated place or area where the maize is put. I was a little bit surprised and shocked and disappointed upon my arrival in the National Assembly how that area is not respected. In the provincial legislatures, when the speaker or the presiding officer come in, we all stand because we give authority and respect and honor that the House is about to start, because a speaker come with a mace, led by the mace, and that's a symbol of authority in Parliament. And we come in that you come in that process. But the funny part is that when the House rise, the mace is left all by itself there. I want to make an appeal that when the House is rising or adjourning, we must give respect and honor. That let the mace be taken out, then we follow thereafter. It is a little bit funny that we start in an orderly manner, but when we finish, we are very much orderly. The second one that I wish to raise, Honorable Speaker, is the removal of members. We remove them from the precinct. The rules are saying they must be removed from the precinct of Parliament. The precinct of Parliament is too huge, and the personnel that we have is not enough to be ushering more than 20 unruly members. And when they are not in your eyes, not in the eyes of the House, other things may happen outside there if we take them for a long time. And therefore, I want to recommend that let the removal be from the Good Hope Chamber. It must be from the Good Hope Chamber up to Max Building. Then the protection services must then come back. Let them not take them out of the gate, because whilst they are going out of the gate, others are becoming unruly inside. So if we can have that to say they must not be escorted outside the gates of Parliament, because that percentage is too big. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chief Whip. The question arising out of this report now, which has been raised by Honorable Papo, is what next? Here is a report presented to us for our attention. What do we do now with these 4 members? Are we now, because I don't think this is where the Rules Committee will deal with such matters. This was a report for noting as far as I'm concerned, and for us to give further instructions, whether the report goes to the powers and privileges or what. Mr. Kaso, I see your hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ma'am, I just, firstly, before we maybe finalize this, to clarify that the matter I suspect Honorable Papo is referring to are the matters of the 9 and 10 June, which were then subjected to an investigation. The investigation came back. Those matters served in the Rules Committee, and the subcommittee there had recommended that those matters must go to the Powers and Privileges Committee. So that is where the events of that day are at the moment. They are before the Powers and Privileges Committee. So it's different from the events of the 30th of August. I thought, ma'am, I should just clarify that point on this one. And then now that one of 9 and 10 June is the one that involved a lot of violence, even according to the report itself. And then the matters raised by the chief whips, I'm glad they've been raised, because the issue of precincts does prove to be a challenge. But that will need a rule amendment. That's number one. But also, even if it was guidelines, we would not be able to specify the max building, because in other instances, members may be from another building of Parliament, and therefore, in the end, we may have a rule that basically talks about members being removed from the chamber and not from the precinct. But I'm saying that is a matter for the rules to be reviewed, and maybe, ma'am, it's a matter that, if this committee agrees, it's a matter that can be referred to the subcommittee, the part that Chief Whip has raised about possible amending that particular rule about the precincts. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
Yes, I agreed, Mr. Castle, that that's what we will do. But can you also attend to the last part, which is this report, which is before us now? Because it is just a report, it does not indicate whether beyond this report will be referred to the Powers and Privileges Committee or not.
Ma'am, the subcommittee in this instance, this is my understanding, was of the view that the rules were implemented. In other words,
implemented in the House.
Were implemented in the House. The members were viewed to be disorderly. They were asked to leave. They refused to leave. They were then removed from the House physically, and went out. So, and I think I must make this point. It does not necessarily follow that every time a member is removed from the House, therefore the member must go to the Powers and Privileges Committee. It depends on the merits of its case. So the Rules Committee can decide, but the rules were implemented in this instance. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaso. Honorable Lisuma.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Just to pick up some points so that also probably when you summarize, there's a clear recommendation that we are putting forward. One, the matters, there are two other matters that Chief Whip of the majority party has raised. One, I agree with that there must be, in a way, have a respect of the mace and the power and the stature that we give the house when we start our business and when we conclude our business of the house. We were previously, I think, in a way, not very consistent in the National Assembly do that we must come back to that to say you don't necessarily need the rules. It needs to be applied unless I'm advised otherwise. That when the house adjourns, then we must allow the maids to leave the chamber first. That's one. Two, Chair, is the matters, I think, not I think, Mr. Klaso have covered me on the matter. But probably what we are saying is that, like the one that we are dealing with, the matter, the report of the investigation on these 4 members, is that if there's some kind of manhandling the PP members, then the Powers and Privileges Committee must look at that. But moving forward, also there must be a clear separation that the rules were implemented in the House. However, that these other things that members or member in question has done, then the Powers and Privileges must look at, so that there's clear what are we dealing with at this level and matters that needs to go to the Powers and Privileges. I also, that one, I agree that I support the notion that the determination of the precinct must be very clear, and also what informs that, because sometimes members, when they are being escorted outside the chamber, they also do their funny things outside where we are not able to see what is happening outside, which might then have a need, as the Chief Whip have suggested. Let's look at that, and I suggest that in agreement that it goes to the subcommittee to look at the details thereof. The last one from my side, Chair, which is just for information and all of us to be aware of, that I'm making a statement that needs to be confirmed or be amended so there's better clarity from my side, is that when the presiding officer has made a ruling, that matter is closed unless a member then finds another way how to deal with the matter, in terms if the member is not satisfied by the ruling of the presiding officer. But it doesn't necessarily need that it needs to go to, for an example, to the Powers and Privileges to challenge or to try and change and overrule the decision of the presiding officer, equally to the Ethics Committee. I'm just wanted to raise that the decisions of the House, having the presiding officer made a determination in terms of the ruling, it ends there unless the member then does it in writing otherwise. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member Lisuma. Honorable Papo, followed by Honorable Korenhoff, and that will be the last hand, Honorable Members, on this matter.
Speaker, I accept the explanation of Mr. Kaso, that the Speaker on that day rightfully and correctly applied the rules, including the physical removal of those members of the House, which shows that those members were wrong. They violated all those rules which are listed in the report, because some of them were claiming that the Speaker actually, by ordering the PPS, which they badly called bouncers, which is also wrong, because this is it's an official title, PPS. The Speaker was wrong. So I want to congratulate the Speaker for applying the rules firmly and fairly, as proven by this report, and then maybe we should end it there, because there is no recommendation that it goes further, and that those members must know that this kind of behavior is not acceptable in the National Assembly, and other members should not actually be allowed to do what they have done. And the list which is named in the is made in the report of the transgressions which happened on that day. It's actually deplorable for members to undermine the authority of the presiding officer in that manner on that day. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Papo. Honorable Gert, you are the last one.
Thank you, Speaker. I think we should accept this report that's before the Rules Committee. Secondly, well, basically the report concludes that the rules have been implemented. I just want to ask the question whether we should not consider to refer this report to the Powers and Privileges Committee due to the seriousness of what happened on the 30th of August. I put the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gert. Honorable members, there's a question now from Honorable Gert. I was just about to summarize by saying, Mr. Kaso has indicated already that the matter raised by the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, which is a matter I think many of us must be concerned about. I've also been very concerned, Honorable Chief Whip, by the chaotic manner in which we sort of close our parliament at the end of the day in the presence of the mace. And therefore we will allow, based on this discussion and your proposal, that a subcommittee on rules develops a specific rule on this one, on how we should issue the method of determination of the precinct. My understanding is currently we are at Good Hope Chamber, and so it would be preferable that maybe when a person is taken out, a person is taken right up, rather than taking the person out of the precinct, because we don't have the capacity. That space is very huge. So we probably take the person up to the Max building, more or less that area, Max building and the Africa House. And then the last matter is the matter now which is being responded to, which is being asked by Honorable Korenov. Should we refer the four to the powers and privileges or not? I see that there is a hand of Honorable Dr. Mulder. Would you like to comment on the matter? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Honourable Speaker. I would like to support the proposal by Dr. Korenov. If it's a formal proposal, I would like to second that. Thank you.
Okay. It is a formal proposal which he is making. So you second that, it's agreed. Then the report, Mr. Kaso, will be referred to the Powers and Privileges Committee. Honorable Papo.
I just wanted to check whether we require a subcommittee on that matter. It just requires when you end, members stand, the presiding officer and the maize team lead, and then we leave. Does it require, I think we just have to have order a bit in the NA, because the way we end, that's the issue. I think the way we start, it should have been the way we end. And it may actually take us a time to have a subcommittee. And so I think we must just, if we agree, everybody agrees, the leaders of every party, it just requires you to implement it. We stand and you leave, the mace follows, and then we then leave. Does it require, I don't think so, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think we just need to implement that as an order in the NA, because we end in a very disorderly fashion.
Thank you, Honorable Papo. I haven't had a dissenting voice on this matter. So I'm assuming that honorable members are all agreeing with the proposal being made here on how we end a session at the end of the day. Is that agreed, honorable members?
Agreed, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lisuma. So those were the matters for today, honorable members. We have, I think we have come to the end of our meeting of the Rules Committee. I am informed that we may have a joint Rules Committee, which is being held on Thursday. Yes.
Madam Speaker, Thursday the Joint Program Committee, ma'am.
Joint Program Committee, not the Joint Rules Committee.
Tomorrow is the Joint Program Committee. The Joint Rules Committee, ma'am, we need to finalize a date with the NCOP for the Joint Rules Committee. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaso. Honorable members, this brings us to the end of our meeting. I thank you all, honorable members, for your constructive engagements on the issues. And hopefully, going forward, we will be which we have to do. Thank you, honorable members. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you,
Thank you, member.